my mouth, my mouth was literally on the floor, and I didn't pick it back up for a solid 10 seconds. I mean,
as of right now, you're a person of interest, a witness to a crime.
A witness? What do you want me to describe how it sounded, Detective?
God's plan is like a beautiful tapestry. And the tragedy of being human is that we only get to see it from the back. With all the ragged threads and the muddy colors. We only get a hint at the true beauty that would be revealed if we could see the whole pattern on the other side. As God does.
Officially Tuesday morning, Daredevil Born Again drops this evening. I'm going to be watching it, and then I'll be covering it in this video. But I'm pretty pumped. Trying to avoid all these clips and things that they keep putting out there. Some things I think they've already kind of spoiled, which I'm not very happy about, but hopefully I'll be wrong. But yeah, just some initial thoughts before this comes out. But yeah, so let's transition, and by now I would have seen Daredevil Born Again, so let's go there. So I decided to wait till this morning, Wednesday morning, to talk about this. I wanted to kind of have a night to sleep this over, and after I watched the first two episodes of Daredevil, and I've got a lot to say. So I'm going to break this up. So we're going to do an episode 1 and 2, spoiler-free kind of thoughts right now. And then I'm going to make a disclaimer whenever we start talking about full-on spoilers. To just give my general thoughts on what I did see last night. They didn't miss a beat with making Daredevil exactly what he needs to be. Especially now in the MCU. Now, we know that he's been introduced. You know, we know he's in the MCU, but at that time that we first saw him in Spider-Man No Way Home, even She-Hulk, and Echo, it was still somewhat unclear if this was the same exact Matt Murdock from the Netflix show that all of us love. And obviously, we know he is now. They've officially folded all of the, I'm going to presume all the Defenders into the MCU now. But we know for sure that Daredevil as a series is definitely folded in. Man, it's going to be really hard to talk about this, generally. So I'm going to talk about this assuming that someone had only seen maybe one trailer, that very first one that I had spoke about, or maybe you've seen nothing. And if that's the case, I envy you, because they have put out so many clips and so many things to potentially spoil what's going on, which like I said, I've mentioned that earlier. So I'm going to talk about this just assuming you know nothing, and I'm going to be as vague as I can. So we do pick back up with Matt Murdock. It's very clear that this is a continuation from season 3 of the Netflix series. We have our returning characters. We've got Karen, Foggy, Wilson Fisk. We've got all of our big players. We also have a good group of new faces too. But what I can say about these 2 episodes, in just 2 episodes alone, the style is there, the lighting, the cinematography, the camera work, the stunt choreography, the fight choreography, all of it's here. And I'm so pleased at what I did see. I think it's incredible. If anything, it makes me very curious to know what they do with the remaining episodes in the weeks to follow. It fascinates me to wonder what they're going to do, because what I've seen so far, I'm super impressed with. Charlie Cox has not missed a beat. This guy is Daredevil. There is no question about it. And Deborah as Karen, spot on. And then Vincent D'Onofrio is Wilson Fisk. He's perfect. I mean, these people just step right back into these roles like it was yesterday. They do such a great job at that. This is kind of one thing I was wondering too, is we also saw in She-Hulk, we also saw a little bit of Daredevil being a little more acrobatic and doing just a couple little things that we never quite saw him do in the Netflix series. And this show kind of strikes a balance between the two. I feel like we get a little more Daredevil using his billy clubs, and the visual of his abilities, I think, is done really well. You'll know what I'm talking about when you see it. But I was really happy to see that Matt and Daredevil, looks a little more comic book, but they still haven't lost some of that groundedness that the original series had. And I like that they struck that balance. As far as the maturity and the I don't want to say gore, but just the maturity in general, it's still here. That hasn't been lost from Netflix to Disney. It sounds kind of funny, and I don't have much to say that's not spoiler, but yeah, I think this show is fantastic. It's easily, there is no question, in 2 episodes alone, this is the best live action Marvel TV show that we've had so far. I'll stand by that. We've had some good ones. We really have. But Daredevil already just evokes style, and it evokes character, and it evokes real weight to what's going on. It's got a lot of personality and style. And I like that. So my biggest takeaway is that the transition from Netflix to them now continuing unofficially season 4 on Disney Plus with this new series, it's kind of seamless. It's as smooth as it possibly could be, and I'm really happy about that. But I'm super pleased. I cannot wait to see what else they've got cooking right now. I hate the trope of people going, "Oh, Marvel's back. No, Marvel's dead." Whenever they have, like, let's say they've got X-Men 97 that came out that everybody loves, or Guardians of the Galaxy 3 that everybody liked, and then they've got something like the Marvels or Captain America 4, and they're like, "Oh, Marvel's dead." It keeps going back and forth. I hate that trope. But I definitely think this is a big win for Marvel. And I hope that the rest of the series is as strong as these first 2 episodes that I've seen. So now I'm going to transition into full spoilers for episode 1. And for the love of God, if you have not seen this show, do not watch this. You do not need this ruined for you. You need to experience this. Unless you just really don't care, or you're not going to watch this, which I highly implore that you do watch it. You've been warned. Here we go.
He said that someone's looking.
I really don't know how to feel about what I saw last night, because we have seen so many clips and pieces of marketing that they basically spelled out that we were going to lose somebody for what little they were in the promotional material. And I was hoping that they didn't just bring this character back just to axe them so early on. They did. I'm telling you, like, for someone who has seen the Netflix show and has been with Foggy for 10 years now, it punched my gut so hard to watch Foggy die. It really hit me hard. I was dreading it because I just felt like it was going to happen. With that said, let's backtrack a little bit. So the opening of episode 1, we get an interesting shot of a building. Now, what we don't know at the time is that this shot is actually going to show up at the end of the episode, where Fisk is overlooking this same building. So the beginning is kind of mirroring where the episode ends up. So we actually pan, and we actually finally get to see the law offices of Nelson, Murdoch, and Paige. It's official. And we see the 3 of them step out after work, and they're chatting, they're having a bunch of fun, and they end up going to Josie's bar. And so we're at a familiar place, we're with familiar characters, they're all having fun. It's nice. We just feel like we picked up right where season 3 left off, like no time has passed. So whenever they're having fun, we also get introduced to a detective, and he's supposedly retiring. We get a little dialogue with him. And we also, Karen and Matt are sitting at a table, and then Foggy and some other woman is sitting at the bar. And this other woman is, her name's McDuffie, and she's another lawyer. And they keep talking about a case and some guy named Benny that Matt and them are representing, and they're kind of flirting back and forth, Foggy and this girl, and Matt's overhearing it, and Karen is too, and they're kind of laughing, they're cutting up, having a good time. But then Foggy gets a phone call, and he steps out, and then immediately Matt hones in and starts listening to Foggy's phone call. And what's so cool that I love about this episode and the next episode is the aspect ratio changes. So whenever Matt listens in, the whole aspect of the shot changes, and the camera zooms in, and you get to focus on whatever Matt's focusing on. I thought that was genius. I mean, it's such a cool visual way to show us, like, his abilities. We hear Foggy talking to this guy, Benny, that was mentioned earlier, and he says that he thinks someone's trying to break into Foggy's apartment because Foggy is stashing this guy for protection. And we get a shot of this guy, and he's picking a lock with a with a paper clip. And then we transition, and we see like a light bulb inside of this place, and there's a fly circling around it. And all we see is a paper clip flying and then impale this fly right on the wall. And immediately you know this Bullseye. The first thing I thought of, obviously, because it's so fresh on my mind, is that this was a direct reference to Colin Farrell, Bullseye, whenever he was in the hospital at the end of the movie, where he took that syringe and threw it at the fly on the wall.
Because evil always survives. Bullseye.
But we get a hand, and he tightens up the light bulb where it's flickering, and we see the Bullseye insignia right on his hand. So immediately there's like just some unspoken dread already. And but yeah, we know Bullseye's coming. We don't really know why or what his agenda is, but we know that he's on the scene. Matt asks Foggy about what's going on. He says, yeah, he said, I think Benny might be in trouble. You know, we stashed him. And then Matt goes and suits up and kind of starts investigating. And what's cool is we get a nice music cue from the original show, and we get introduced to Matt, or Daredevil, in such a different way this time around. He's using his billy clubs, he's grappling and swinging around, and then we get a cool shot of him just in full suit, landing. He's got so much like aura around him. We see him just jumping rooftop to rooftop, swinging on like water towers. It's so Daredevil. Like, it's everything I loved about the Netflix show, but also more. And again, I feel like it strikes that balance between being grounded, but also being just a little more comic book for the MCU. And just seeing him move around and use his billy clubs like that, I was so pleased. Like, it was so cool. And but Matt finally stops, and he starts listening in, and he hears Foggy on the phone with Benny again. And he says, hey, he made me give up your location. I'm sorry. And as soon as he says that, you see it's this really cool zooming effect where Matt's head stays still. It's actually this shot right here on the TV. Matt's face stays still, but all the background zooms in and out of perspective. And Matt listens, and he hears a click. And we transition, see Bullseye adjusting his scope. And then we pan back down to the street, and Foggy is shot right in front of Karen on the sidewalk. And immediately, Matt's trying to get there anyways. Bullseye steps out from the smoke, and he says his famous line from season 3 again.
Hello, Karen.
And right before he can pull the trigger, Matt swings in, and they bust into Josie's bar. Now, this also transitions us into our oneer, the one shot that's always been famous from Daredevil, where we have one shot that's continuous with no cuts, and it appears to be one moving shot through a whole sequence. We get that here. It starts at the bar, and Matt and Bullseye are going face to face. I mean, Matt's kicking the crap out of him, and Bullseye's laying blades and hurting Matt from a distance. And we transition through the bar, up through the stairs, through that clip we've seen, and then they go back up to the roof, and they're fighting even more. And throughout this whole fight, we actually, once in a while, Matt keeps listening in for Foggy's heartbeat. He keeps checking in on him, and he keeps hearing Karen say, you know, hold on, hold on. And it's kind of like the driving. There's so much good tension throughout this whole fight and this whole sequence. It's awesome. But again, they get to the roof, and Matt's just wailing on Bullseye, tears his mask off, and keeps beating on him. And we keep panning down to Karen trying to hold over Foggy's wound, and he's just bleeding. You hear his heartbeat slowly slowing down until Matt doesn't hear it anymore, and you watch Foggy die right there in front of Karen. And it's just, it's devastating. I mean, it sucks. I hated it as much as I like the idea of something setting off the series. But either way, Matt loses it. He's over there gripping Bullseye on the edge of the roof. You know, he's screaming at him. He's like, why? Why did you do that? Him just being the menace he is, just smiles and laughs. And when I kid you not, my mouth dropped and stayed open as soon as Bullseye's laughing, and Matt tosses Bullseye straight off this roof. And it's this wide shot where you see the entire building, the entire street, and you see Matt just shove him right off, and he falls and face plants right on the sidewalk behind Karen. my mouth, my mouth was literally on the floor, and I didn't pick it back up for a solid 10 seconds. I mean, I could not believe that he did that. And then Matt is just distraught. He takes off his mask. He's just crying. And that detective, he was helping gather people out of the bar, the one retiring. He makes it up to the roof and actually sees Matt as Daredevil. We also pan back down, and Karen, as soon as Bullseye splattered on the ground behind her, she doesn't know it's him. She's like, please God, because I guess she thought maybe it was Matt, and she turns around and sees it's Bullseye instead. We actually get a zoom in and of Bullseye's face laying there on the ground, and his eyes open, and he takes a breath. So the dude just literally took I don't know how many foot drop and survived through it, which was just insane. As far as Matt is concerned, even though Bullseye's not dead, Matt just lost his best friend, and his biggest line was crossed. He intentionally tried to kill somebody. Obviously, from that point forward, things change, and Matt tosses his mask off the roof, which is the shot we see in the trailer. And it's such a cool transition. We've seen his mask float down to the sidewalk, and we transition to the new opening credits scene for this whole series. And it's cool. Instead of blood and stuff, or, you know, going off buildings and stuff like the Netflix show, this one shows things breaking, like in stone. And everything's falling apart until pieces are reformed, and it makes Daredevil into a standing like statue again. The opening credits is symbolic of what the show's title is, Daredevil Born Again. I think the show's probably going to focus on Matt's way back up to a good place, because right now where we just left him, he was at his lowest. And we pick back up, and here I was like, okay, how much time is going to pass? You know, and we pick up with Matt in a nice new apartment, and it says 1 year later. And he's obviously moved out of Hell's Kitchen. He's getting dressed for something, we don't know what, and we see, you know, a little paper from Foggy's funeral that's in Braille. But we quickly learned that Matt's getting dressed to go to a hearing, and this hearing is concerning Foggy's murder. And Bullseye is standing there in cuffs. He's restrained, and then Matt is actually on the stand. And he's like, I've stood in this court several times, but he said, this is the first time I've been on the other side of things. And he says, punishment, or, you know, sentencing this man is not going to bring back my friend. I mean, it's really gut-wrenching. And it helps that sting of Foggy being dead last longer. And I'm glad that they took time to make you feel that absence and make you feel the pain that these people are feeling. And whenever Matt's giving his testimony, he freezes because he hears a certain step and a heartbeat, and he realizes that it's Karen. And she finally enters in late into the hearing and stands at the back. But he finishes off. He says, I hope that you put this man away. And they sentence Bullseye to so many counts of murder and first degree, blah, blah, blah. He's going to be put away for a while as far as what the judge ruled. But I think we all know that he's probably going to get out at some point. But the hearing is over, and Matt and Karen are catching back up right outside the courtroom. It's pretty quickly revealed that Matt distanced himself from Karen for a while after Foggy's death, and then Karen did the same to him. And Matt's trying to reconnect with her. Karen's angry that he distanced himself, and they just kind of keep going back and forth. Nothing's resolved. And Matt's trying to urge her to, you know, to stick around. He wants to talk. He wants to, you know, catch up. And she's like, no, I'm good. She says she moved out to San Francisco now. It's different than from New York. And she basically just denies Matt. She gets up to leave, and she says, oh yeah, I found this from the night at the bar. And she hands him that horn that's missing off of Daredevil's helmet from that night. So that kind of makes me wonder how much Karen is going to be in this particular season, since she supposedly lives across the entire country now. I don't know. I guess we'll have to see about that. So after this is done, we catch back up with Vanessa, Fisk's wife, and she's talking to these guys. She's more or less orchestrating some business deals, and then Wilson walks in and kind of clears the room. And quickly you realize that there's some kind of weird tension between him and Vanessa. And you learn not long after that he left her for so long to do other ventures, do other things. And I think that more or less explains what he was doing in Hawkeye and Echo, which I didn't watch Echo. So they smartly kind of, I was wondering how they were going to treat that. So they actually tie in and loosely reference his other appearances that we've seen so far. And she says, yeah, she said, you left me and I had to step up and do the business part of this. Everything's great. It's better than it's ever been. He says, that's awesome. He says, I feel like I want to keep that up and let's fix our marriage and also let's help this city. So I think he wants her obviously to be with him as he runs for mayor, which also starts that whole thing. Fisk is running for mayor of New York and he wins. He actually wins within the first episode. But before he wins, Matt is actually back at his apartment and he overhears on the TV Fisk announcing his campaign officially, which gets his gears turning immensely. We actually figure out what Matt's actually kind of been up to normally since Foggy's death. We learned that Matt's quit being Daredevil for the past year because a line was crossed and he wants the judicial system and everything else to handle it. He feels like he lost the right to be Daredevil, which is really interesting. But you actually learn that Matt and McDuffie, that girl who Foggy was speaking to, Matt and her formed together for a partnership and they have their own firm. It's Murdoch and McDuffie. And Matt has a PI that he works with, and this PI is actually that detective who retired from the police force and I guess is working with them now. And obviously he's close with Matt because he knows his secret. And he does some digging on Fisk and is like, yeah, he said he is running for mayor, but all of his money seems clean. This is kind of unusual. And Matt's like, well, it almost looks like he's sincerely changed, but he said something still doesn't feel right because this guy's tried to kill me several times and we've had history. We do catch back up and we do see more of Fisk and his campaign, and we get introduced to some guy who is younger and is kind of like pumping Fisk up, and he's not really kissing his rear end, but he's kind of doing that. Then we kind of get to learn like how his campaign's going, and it's kind of short-lived, but he does win. To kind of go back to Matt, we actually get Matt gets a love interest right off the bat. And the way this happens is McDuffie asked Matt, he said, yeah, we got a new client, can you go meet her at a coffee shop or whatever? And he says, yeah, I'll do that. So he goes to a coffee shop and he sits down, and he meets this woman, and he says, well, what kind of things do you expect from our law firm? And she kind of looks confused. She went, I was going to ask you what kind of therapy you were expecting. And immediately Matt figures out that McDuffie had set them two up, or had set him up to get therapy, kind of throw them both into the ring, because she's a friend of McDuffie's. They actually end up hitting things off, and you see them go out a few times. Matt ends up running into Fisk not too much later, and he asked if they could talk, which is part of the trailer we've seen, and also a clip where Matt and Fisk are sitting in a diner, and they're kind of frank with each other, and honestly, they speak to each other almost like old friends, which is just really odd. They've got like a mutual respect for each other. It's really funny, but Fisk says, asked Matt, he said, it's been a long time. Do you have any kids? And he went, no. Do you? And Fisk went, no. He said, I tried to mentor somebody, but it just didn't turn out too well, which I guess is referencing Echo. And Matt said, yeah, didn't they shoot you in the face? And then Fisk just laughs. I don't know if that was like a blooper or like if that was scripted, but that was just kind of funny. I mean, it just felt kind of genuine, which is a praise I'll give the entire series up to this point, is they've still retained that genuine person-to-person communication and interpersonal relationships. They're strong, and this series picks that up with what the Netflix series did so well. Their conversation kind of ends a little more sour, where Fisk is like, well, he says, if I become mayor, I'm not going to tolerate vigilantes. I'm going to put a stop to it. And Matt says, well, if you step out of line, I'll be there. And Fisk is like, okay, who's warning me that? The lawyer or, your darker half? But yeah, it sets up like a really interesting conflict and relationship change immediately between Fisk and Matt. But by the end of the episode, Matt and, can't remember her name, but his new girlfriend are out walking the streets, and he overhears that Fisk has won. And we get to see kind of like a rally or like crazy people going around the streets and kind of celebrating or not celebrating. And we get back to that shot of that building from the very first opening of the episode. Instead, Fisk is standing up there looking down the street, and Matt is down there looking up at Fisk. And what's really cool is Fisk is part of his face is black and a part of it's bright white or blue from the light. And then down there, part of Matt's face is dark in the shadow, and then the other part is red. And I really like that, just because the Netflix show did such a good job with the cinematography and then the lighting and just how it looked. And this show also has taken some of those cues. And I love that, along with the music choice that they choose to use in this sequence. It's great. It's awesome. But episode one was just, it was spectacular. I really like how they picked back up where we left off, but yet they also gave a really strong argument and reason for this series existing and the way that this is going to play out. They gave a reason for the stakes to be there and for Matt to be in a place where he is now. I hate that we lost Foggy in the process, but I think it was a gut punch, something to invest us that they needed. And I think even Charlie Cox mentioned that he was unsure about that decision to kill Foggy. I think ultimately it was the right gut punch, but I still hate that we're not going to see Matt and Foggy and just Foggy in general going forward in this series unless there's flashbacks or something else of that nature. So with that said, I think episode 1 was a fantastic opening to this series. It was very shocking. It had twists. It had some great action. It had some great Daredevil moments. It had some great Matt Murdock moments. It's a really strong starting place for a brand new iteration and a continuation of where we left Matt Murdock in the Netflix series. But I have seen episode 2, and I'm working on a video right now. I'll probably see that tomorrow to follow this one up, but I figured I'd split it up, make it a little shorter of a video. I don't want to make too long of videos, and people don't want to watch them all, which I get. But yeah, that was episode 1. That's just my thoughts. Stay tuned probably tomorrow for episode 2, and yeah, I'll see you guys then. Peace.